Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Nick Phillips. I'm a journalist at the Arizona Capitol Times, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's debate. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor of this event, and as the state's voter education agency, Clean Elections hosts debates so voters have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions on the issues that matter most to them, and vote informed. Candidates that have a contested general election have been invited to participate in the debate. There's a sandstorm, I apologize. And please note that this evening we have candidates from both the Senate and the House participating in the debate. As the moderator, I'll ensure our candidates have the opportunity to engage directly with their respective opponents this evening. The questions that will be asked tonight are coming directly from voters. Leading up to the debates, Clean Elections conducted outreach to voters across the state, asking for questions for the candidates. Additionally, Clean Elections surveyed voters to learn what issues are important to them. And this survey data, along with input from the journalists at the Arizona Capitol Times, Arizona Agenda, and Green Valley News and Sahuarita Sun, have been utilized to guide the discussion so it best serves voters. But of course, we still want to hear directly from you, the voter. So if you're watching this debate live, you can submit a question at any time by emailing debates@kc-a.com, by text by sending a message to 480-808-1814, or by phone by calling 480-937-1253. And if you do send a message or make a call, please be ready to specify if your question is for a specific candidate or for all candidates. We will, of course, screen questions for clarity to eliminate duplicates and speeches or personal attacks. This debate is scheduled to last about an hour and a half, so we may not get to all audience questions, but I'll do my best. To the candidates, you're going to have 1 minute for your opening and closing statements, and approximately 90 seconds for your responses to voter questions. We encourage an open exchange of dialogue between opponents, so if you feel the need to respond to another candidate's comments, you may do so, though I may limit responses for time management purposes. And I just want to remind the candidates that the audience that this is a respectful, courteous, and professional environment. Our goal tonight is to connect candidates and voters so our electorate can vote informed. So tonight we have both of the candidates running for state senate in District 23. They're Mr. Gary Garcia Snyder and Mr. Brian Fernandez. And we have two of the three candidates running for state house. They're Ms. Mariana Sandoval and Mr. Jesus Lugo. And we're going to start off with opening statements this evening in alphabetical order, beginning with the Senate candidates. So first up will be Mr. Fernandez. So without further ado, Mr. Fernandez, your opening statement.
Good evening. My name is Brian Fernandez, and I am from Yuma, Arizona. I was born and raised in Yuma, went to public schools. I went to Arizona State University for my undergrad, and after graduating, moved to DC. I started a software company. I moved back to Arizona after a few other places. And when I came back, I started another software company and didn't really have any intention of doing anything in politics. My mother had spent almost a decade in the legislature, and she decided to leave. She resigned to go work in the Biden administration. I dropped my name in, sort of as a whim, and the Board of Supervisors were kind enough to appoint me. Again, being that I'm not a politician, I'm a software developer, I think I've come to this job a little different. I've come with a much more open mind. I work with Democrats, I work with Republicans, I work with independents. I don't really have a party preference in that way. While in the legislature, I was able to secure quite a bit in the budget, and I did it by working with all sides. And I'm very proud of that. And I'll talk more about this later, but money for Cesar Chavez Boulevard, expanding Highway 95, going towards the improving grounds, money for Arizona Western College, money in the water bill to help conservation, and over $1 billion for public education. I'm very proud of these things, and I hope to talk more about them soon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. We'll move on to Mr. Garcia Snyder.
Good evening. My name is Gary Garcia Snyder. I'm your nominee in your LD23. I live here in San Luis, Arizona. I wanted to say thank you to everyone that's watching, but also I want to give a special thanks to Clean Elections. I'm going to do something that's not common in Clean Elections. I'm going to give an invocation because it's very important to have. If you may bow your head. Father, we ask anything of you, we would first like to thank you for all the goodness, mercy that you have shown in this beautiful world called America. Between that, today we need healing because we need to wander the lights. We're wandering away and we need you back. We need the spiritual darkness that is coming ahead of us. We need to make sure that we're bringing you closer to us to help us unite as a country, unite as a person. We need to be together in this fight. It doesn't matter what political party you choose. It's us as a nation to be together. We are a nation of strong, intelligent, a lot of different heritage, but we believe in one thing. We believe in family, God, and faith. This is what we're about. So once again, my name is Gary Garcia Snyder. I'm running for your state senate here in LD 23, which it originally was 4, but the redistricting is 23. I'm raised in Texas, left my life in Seattle, Washington, moved to Arizona here in 2009, and have been part of the Yuma County development through sports, through outreach, and most importantly, nonprofit help. Right now, I'm very advocating for our district because unfortunately our district needs a lot of help. There's a lot of resources that the rural area needs, and that's why I'm here to help and advocate for our communities throughout the South County and most importantly, the southern borders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And those are our 2 Senate candidates here tonight. We'll move on to our candidates for representative, beginning with Mr. Lugo.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Clean Election, for this opportunity. My name is Jesus Lugo. I was born in Yuma, Arizona, raised in Gadsden, Arizona. I currently live in Gadsden, Arizona. I've been living in Gadsden, Arizona for over 23 years. I've been involved in politics since I was 17 years old. I have my bachelor's in political science. I'm a social worker. Day by day, I'm out in the community helping people that are dealing with substance abuse, with mental health, kids dealing with trauma, and women dealing with domestic violence. So my goal is, as a politician, as your next state representative, is going to be to help those people in need. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And our last opening statement will come from Ms. Sandoval.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. We saved the best for last. I'd like to start by thanking our moderator, Nick Phillips, and the Clean Elections Commission for sponsoring this debate. And as a clean candidate, I'm honored to be here tonight. My name is Mariana Sandoval, and I'm running to represent the people of Legislative District 23 as our next state representative. Like many in my district, I'm from a Mexican immigrant family. My mother immigrated to the United States to give our family a better life. And as a single mother, she worked hard to raise my siblings and I, and we learned the importance of family, hard work, and service to others from my mom and from my faith. She always told us, nunca olvides darle la mano a los que vienen detrás de ti, which loosely translates to don't forget to always give folks a hand up. I've dedicated my entire professional career to public service, and I continue to honor those values my mother and my faith instilled in me. And I will bring those same values to the state legislature. I'm not a career politician. I'm a working class wife and mother who believes in service to others and putting community first. This means that I will prioritize fully funding our education system, better paying jobs for working class people, which includes educators, of course, and access to affordable healthcare. I will work to address our climate issues, especially our water crisis in Arizona. And I hope to be able to earn your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Sandoval, and thanks to all the candidates for your statements. We're going to move on to questions now. And our first question will first go to Mr. Garcia Snyder. And I want to ask you all about the state of our economy. Arizona has one of the highest rates of inflation in the country, and the cost of housing is also increasing quickly in many parts of the state. What's your plan to give Arizonans some relief from the rising cost of living?
To be honest, we are in a crisis. Right now, the American families are taking a big hit, but most importantly here in Arizona, we are one of the top places that are taking the inflation very, very hard. Classes like me, medium to small, lower income classes here, more in San Luis, Gadsden, Somerton, all the areas in the southern border here in Yuma County. But now we go to Maricopa, we go to Gila Bend, we go to Tohono Tribe and South Xavier. All of us, also why we're all having these issues. You know, it's not just gas, it's not just food, it's also cost of electricity, it's cost of baby powder. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we don't have, and it's costing us a lot of money. We're not making more money, we're losing money. So me working with a bipartisan bill, we're looking to cut some taxes to be able to help people for the next 2 years, because that's what it's going to take to get us out and then move forward. We also need to inject some money into the economy to be business. We need to help people, put them back to work, give them the opportunity to be able to feed their families, feed their education, because their education is very important. You know, we want people to work, to learn, and give themselves the opportunity to make more money. Right now in our district that we're pulling numbers is the middle to smaller class, it's what's leading in our district. We have more people from middle to smaller class working in these areas in the LD23 than the high making over $100,000. You know, we are the ones taking the hit. We are the hardworking people that are feeling this. You know, this is an administration that's hurt us and it's not helping us out. So I believe here's a legislation. They weren't expecting that the last 2 years, and unfortunately it got hit this year. And we need to make sure this bill is very important. We need to work together, bipartisan, to save American families and Arizona families, because that's the most important thing. Right now, you know, you have parents that are working 2 jobs and still don't have enough money to put food on their table for their children. You have parents studying to make opportunity to make more money, but yet that's still not an opportunity right now. The taxes are high. That's why Ducey cut it down to a flat tax of 2.5. We need to go a little further. I think this is an extreme times that we need to work together as a bipartisan to be able to lower some of these taxes. Now, we do need to talk to these municipalities and counties to see if they can lower the tax rate, because we know doing that will definitely cut them in certain areas, but we need them just like a business, a person, a family, a government. We need to cut our taxes and work together and prioritize what we're doing.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Garcia-Snyder. We're going to move on. Mr. Lugo, what do you think? I heard tax cuts. What are your plans to give Arizona some relief?
You know, I believe in unions. I believe the power of the worker. I think we need to raise the minimum wage and provide benefits, better pay for workers in Arizona. I will always advocate for the working class. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sandoval, some different opinions so far. What do you think the state legislature can do in this respect?
Well, there's a lot we can do. We need to rework our budget and prioritize, right? One of the things that the governor could have done with that 5 million surplus was help the families that are struggling in this inflation, but he didn't do that. So, you know, had I been in there, I would have advocated for that. For direct assistance to the families. One of the major factors that our families, working families are struggling with is the rising cost of rent. It is extremely expensive for people to just have a roof over their heads. And so funding the state housing fund, like actually putting money in that fund to help folks relieve some of that would help. We could have also, which we didn't, and I don't think it's planned to do, we could have done a holiday, maybe gas tax, maybe help cities eliminate the taxes on essentials like food and things that, you know, baby formulas, for diapers, things that families need to survive. And so I think prioritizing the needs of families when we have a surplus would have been very helpful during this inflation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fernandez, you're the only one of us tonight who's been in the legislature. What do you think still needs to be done to help Arizona families and the economy that we're living in now?
Well, there's plenty we can do, but there's also plenty that we did. So we did put some money in the Housing Trust Fund. We didn't put enough. And there's no question about it. That's something that we can, you know, add to. You know, the inflation is multiple problems. So, you know, 30% of inflation is actually just car prices. You know, some of it is food, and you know, other things. Housing is a big part of it. Housing is complicated. housing is not something that you can just fix with the snap of finger or fingers. Really, a big part of that is building housing stock, supply. I mean, it's all supply and demand. And when it comes to that, NIMBYism has prevented a lot of housing developments from forming. I think that that's something that we need to work on. We are working on it. I think we need to start looking at multiple floors. In housing in a lot of places, there'll be triple deckers, what they call them, right? So there's 3 families in one house versus just one. These are things that just to use more, of the resources that we have now. But let me caution here, one of the reasons why we have high cost of housing, for instance, is that we have people moving here from other states. That's a good thing. It's a really good thing. It shows that we're doing something right when it comes to our economy. And we have ASU, we have U of A, and we have NAU, and a lot of our employers to thank for that. But what we need to make sure is that we are keeping up with the other resources that we need for that growth, water being one of them. And I think we're going to be talking about that a little later tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Nick, I would like to respond.
Okay, sure. Let's keep it to about 30 seconds here, but go ahead.
On Jesus, I do believe you believe in unions. I'm actually endorsed by the aerospace and machinist unions, which is throughout Arizona, and I do believe in that. Now, the more you up cost minimum wage, more the businesses charge more. Everything starts going up higher and higher and higher. Now, I do believe on Mariana, what she talked about is great points, valid points, but we were not in the legislature to advocate harder what needed to be is our American Arizona families that needed more money. We did push a lot of the budget towards other places, but the most important thing is American families' lives in Arizona and water. That should be the number 1 and number 2 importance. Thank you.
Okay, all right. We're going to get to a lot of these things. We've still got some time ahead of us. So I want to move on. Something some of you have already referenced in your opening statements is that LD23 includes a number of rural communities. In fact, it's one of the largest districts by area in the state. And this year, the legislature put aside a lot of money to expand Interstate 10, which connects some of our biggest population centers. But tell me, and we're going to start with Mr. Lugo on this, what do you think are the infrastructure needs in LD23, and what can the legislature do to address them?
Of course. I'm from Gadsden, Arizona. It's really hard. The infrastructure in Gadsden, Arizona, we really don't have streets. And I believe we need to focus on small cities like Gadsden, Arizona, the Tohono Nation, and build some streets, provide them with resources and funds for them to have better streets and better, just not the big cities like Yuma, Goodyear. We also got to focus on the small cities. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Ms. Sandoval, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I agree with Jesus. There is a lot of need, especially in the rural areas. As Brian mentioned, with the current legislature, we're able to secure some funding to expand Cesar Chavez, which is a much needed infrastructure need in San Luis. I have been down there. I have driven on that street. I have seen the needs, especially when we have floods and we have storms. The roads are already in really bad shape. Same with the nation. There is a lot of needed infrastructure there. There are parts in Tucson too, in South Tucson, that I visited that also need some infrastructure assistance. So our district is very diverse. There's urban and rural, but definitely in visiting the different parts of our district, I have seen the biggest needs in Yuma, and in the nation, and in parts of Tucson.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Mr. Fernandez, talk about infrastructure. What more can the legislature do in District 23?
Right. Well, I think this is what I think the question was what District 23 needs. And infrastructure is one of them. And those are things that we worked on. I was proud to support Cesar Chavez Boulevard. That was my #1 priority when I got here, when I got to the legislature. And we were able to do it. And it wasn't easy. Also, Highway 95 going up to YPG. That's very important. I actually had a conversation just yesterday with a Yuma City Councilman, Gary Knight. Gary and I chatted about some of the needs. And one of the things that he talked about, and I agree with him, is her funds, which are the funds that the state shares with communities to maintain roads, that her funds are not keeping up. And it's not necessarily, I mean, there's a few things going on. The state used to sweep them during the bad times. But even now, because of cars getting better gas mileage, for instance, it's a flat fee. It's not a percentage. So it doesn't matter, you know, how high gas prices go. Gas prices could be $50 a gallon. You still get the same amount. So what he suggested, and I tend to agree, is taking an existing tax that we have, whether it be a sales tax, a property tax, just a portion of it that's already there, and then dedicating that to communities. And I believe that local communities are better suited to decide where that money should be spent versus me as a legislator. So what I'd like to do is see the money go directly to local communities, let them decide what to do with them. And in that way, I think that we'll be able to talk about these roads in Gadsden that Mr. Lugo was talking about, and any others that otherwise as a legislator in Phoenix, you might not know. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Garcia Snyder, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I can tell you firsthand, I live in San Luis, Arizona, so I know what it is to travel these roads. I know what it is to see a lot of the infrastructure that's been not taken care of for the past 6 years, almost 10 years. Our elected officials that have been there in the LD4, now 23, have not done a great job. They've only advocated for 2 things, education and water. They have not let any infrastructure, any news. We're growing like at a rate. San Luis, Arizona is growing very huge. There's a lot of section called an EFE out there, and they have thousands of homes. The developer is actually the new mayor-elect, and the first thing she's saying is, obviously, our infrastructure roads that now was approved by a bipartisan, but the majority pushed that because we need to spend some of that money in infrastructure. It's very important to put it in rural roads, very important. From there, now we have street whitening projects. We have illumination, broadband, which that's coming to the rural areas. Very important, Highway 10 and the 303 junction. That's very good for Goodyear and anything around that area. MC 85, which is the state route on the backside where Goodyear is, that is a very traveled road. If you go from that road, it goes all the way to Phoenix. That road is very stringent because you have all the trucks and tractors going through there because that's where all the big fabrications are, on the manufacturing plants. That's where the agriculture is. There's a lot of stuff that we can focus on, but the #1 thing is always infrastructure. You can't wait 6 years, 7 years to allocate money or advocate just for this roads now. It's been keeping up. We're growing like #1 in the state, in Arizona. San Luis is booming because we are a border town. It's not just the state level that we're working with. Now we're working with the federal because we have the official ports. We have the President port, and then we have the trucking crossing on the side of the commercial port. So there's a lot of ports that we have in San Luis, Arizona, and they're putting us a stretcher on our streets. So we need to make sure every year we're advocating for the rural voice, rural area. We go to Toronto, needs definitely a lot of structure, and Tucson.
Excellent. Okay, I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to make sure we get to some other topics this evening as well.
Right, and I'm going to respond to that. I am a legislator in District 4 currently, and I'll tell you that I'm on the Transportation Committee, and these are the things that I do. Cesar Chavez Boulevard, I was told that was a priority. I went there, I felt it was a priority, and I got it funded. I worked with Mr. Dunn, with Ms. Kerr, with Ms. Osborne, and with Mr. John, and we got 95 as well. And we spent a lot of money throughout the state on transportation projects in Goodyear, in Tucson, and throughout the rest of the state as well. So we're doing it to the extent that folks say it's not being done fast enough. Well, in years past, the state decided to cut funding from the HERF fund and sweep it into other places because tax cuts were more important than funding our infrastructure projects. We're trying to change that.
I would like to do a short reply, 10 seconds.
Okay, 10 seconds.
No,
I like
I
the
do
rules.
appreciate that, Brian, but what my talk was, the past 6 to 10 years of elected officials in our district have not focused on that. So if you're talking about a few years before where the catch cuts were and the funding was not available, but they were available 6, 8, 10 years ago. That's what I'm talking about,
Okay.
the rural voice.
Okay, I think we'll leave it at that. I want to move on to something that I hope everyone wants to talk about this evening, which is education. And we'll start off with something specific to Ms. Sandoval first. Do you know how much teachers earn in your local school district, and is it enough?
It is not enough, and it varies. And it varies by district, and it varies by section, and it varies by state, because the state of Arizona does not have a pay scale. Many states do, we do not. And whatever it is, I think the average is like in the 40s. As a matter of fact, I spoke to a teacher yesterday that teaches down in Somerton. He makes about 40,000. He's a special ed teacher, and he's planning to go work in El Centro because he will start making 80,000 there, double what he's making right now. So whatever we think we should be giving teachers, think double. Whatever is in our mind, we gotta double that. We are not paying them enough. I was a former school board member here in the Agua Fria Union High School District, and that was one of our biggest priorities. We do not value educators. We do not value their education. Some of these teachers have PhDs, multiple master's degrees, and they had to work at restaurants on the weekends to make ends meet because they were not making enough money. And so a specific amount, it just depends. It depends on the years of experience. It depends on the district, but whatever they're making is not enough. We need to double whatever they're making, and we need to work on a statewide scale so that every teacher can come in here, depending on their years of experience, and know exactly where they'll end up on that scale, depending on if it's a rural or urban district in our state.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Mr. Fernandez. How about in your district? Do you know how much teachers are earning, and should it be where it's at right now?
Yeah, well, and I'm going to reiterate, it varies. So my sister's a teacher at a public school. My brother-in-law's a teacher. My mother was a teacher, and she was also on the school board. And this is a problem, when it comes to funding. Governor Ducey was very proud of his proposition, I believe it was 123, which took more money out of the state trust fund, which was for education. It increased the amount that was coming out in a shorter period of time, and said that there was going to be, I believe it was 10% pay raises. Very few districts had that. And that's a bigger problem. And I'd like to talk about that as well. It's not just teachers that we're talking about. I want teachers to be paid as professionals. We want them to act as professionals. We punish them as professionals, but we don't treat them as professionals when it comes to pay and other benefits. And that's really important. But what's equally important is that we pay a living wage for everyone that works in schools. When people have contact with our kids, when they're working with them, we want to make sure that whether it's a teacher's aide, whether it's a custodian, whether it's people working in the office, whether it's a tech person, that they're all being paid a wage that's going to allow them to live. It's unfair to say we're going to give away a raise to teachers and then we're going to let the rest of the staff just suffer along. We need to make sure that everyone's paid and everyone's treated as a professional.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Garcia Snyder, maybe it's going to vary too, but I'm still waiting for somebody to tell me how much do teachers earn in your district.
All right.
And should it be more?
Look at the average in Arizona. It's going to say 55,000, 56. That is not working for our district. I mean, we have Somerton making 44. We have Yuma High School making 50. We have Gadsden making 47. We have Ajo making 44. We have Paloma, which is Gila Band, making 50, and Hyder making 58, and then Altar 47, and the Tohono tribe making 50. What it is, we're seeing a lot of the higher prices is because of rural areas that they have to attract teachers to come there. You know, I'm all for keeping on a medium size to start off with, and because of their education level, master's degree, that they should be paid accordingly. I do agree on that. So I would like to see the teachers making at least a minimum of 60K, not the first ones coming in, but the ones that have been there for a few years and have shown their excellence in testing for the children. I'm all for that. Now, do I agree that there's teachers that are making probably lower than mid 30s? Yes, I'm sure, but not in our district that we know currently.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to Mr. Lugo. In your district, do you think teachers are earning enough money? You're still on mute, so
I think people
there we
should
go.
get paid a living wage, and Gadsden is a very rural area and a very low income community. So I see a lot of teachers that are struggling to make things happen. So they get paid around $35,000 to $40,000. And I think we need to pay those teachers more money.
Okay. All right. And now I want to ask you all, and for this one, we'll start with Mr. Fernandez, about what the state legislature should do to ensure that public schools in Arizona are appropriately funded. And also, please tell me if you support this year's expansion of universal school vouchers as a part of the state funding for public education.
Glad you asked. Let me start with that. No, I did not support the voucher expansion. I did support, and we helped negotiate the pay rate and the increase in education in general and aggregate for public schools. I think that when the Republicans, the first number I heard from them was 300 million. We ended up over $1 billion, and we have the bipartisan budget to thank for that. Yes, we need to increase. We need to increase it, but we need to make sure that, again, that we're getting funding everywhere that we need it. And the reality is there's some schools that need it more. There are schools in a lot of areas that have been failing their students. We need to make sure that's not happening. But yes, the biggest thing that we need to do, and the Republicans have been very resistant, is to pass the aggregate spending limit. So for those that don't know, that was something that was passed in the early 80s. And what it does is it has an artificial amount that we cannot go over in terms of spending. We were able to push past it last year, but every year we've got to pass it. We thought the Republicans would let us put it in this year, but vouchers were more important to them, and then they didn't want to do it so that they would have some leverage. But we need to pass that. Otherwise, we're going to have gigantic cuts to our school systems. I'm hoping that we do that. We're pushing for it. AEA, many other organizations are aggressively lobbying, but the governor so far has not really shown that he cares.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mr. Garcia Snyder, Mr. Fernandez says no to vouchers, but the state needs to be putting more money into public schools in other ways. What do you think?
As your next senator, I would choose to override the cap. The cap was set in 1980. I will even go further in description. The cap wasn't based on inflation, cost of living, infrastructure repair for the schools or rooms or classrooms or expansion. That's why I would pass it this upcoming session, but I wouldn't do it permanently. Why? Because there needs to be in there a formulated, every year there's an increase, just like this. We didn't know that inflation was going to come. Imagine if we would have stayed there on an exact number, then we would not be able to extend it. So I would pass it this session coming up with an open end, because we need to put all this inflation in there, infrastructure, a lot of new stuff that needs to be taken care of these schools. I toured yesterday here in Somerton, Arizona. I've also toured in Buckeye and Goodyear. A lot of these schools, the same exact thing. They need that cap because that's $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million that they have to cut. We don't want them to cut that. We don't want them to lose, great quality teachers, because our education system is very important to me. Now, I'll go a little bit further than that. The formula. Right now, the formula is not based on how we should run in rural areas or in the state of Arizona. I would like to see the formula eliminated, lower districts, and moved up so the financial gap between the lower district and the higher district are about the same, because they should be able to get the same funding as a higher populated district. We want them to be equal. We want them to have the opportunity to have that. But on top of that, we go a little further. All the new funding coming in, I would like to allocate it to the lower districts, because they're already behind the ball. They have a lot of infrastructure problems that they need to be taken care of. And if we don't take care of it now, it's going to go years and years and years. And we don't want any security purposes for something to fall in the business, anything around that school. We want to make sure it's secure. We want to make sure our teachers, our employees, our children are secure. So that's, to me, is very important. The formula, the over expenditure that we put in the information, but yes, I would definitely do again, once in Senate, say yes to the vouchers.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna take my 30-second opportunity that we're doing now.
Can we go through everyone and then come back to you, Mr.
Well, no,
Fernandez?
because I think it's important for this. So he's
Okay.
for vouchers, and I think that, I want to make that clear, but I don't think he understands the aggregate spending limit. The aggregate spending limit is not used to increase, it's used to limit. So when we want to eliminate it completely, because what that's doing is putting a cap on the increase. We don't need it. It's not something that was, it wasn't thought out when it first came out. So that's something that's, I think, really important for us to understand is this is not something that it penalizes schools, but it's not something that helps with inflation or anything along those lines.
I'll respond real fast. When I said that, I said I would override the cap. That means eliminate the cap so the schools can get their
Okay.
funding, but also. have
Okay,
the-
I wanted to come back to this, but it sounds like we're getting our positions out now. Mr. Garcia Snyder, do you want to make it clear? Do you support overriding the expenditure limit for 1 year or permanently eliminating it?
You asked me that question for the next session. I would override it for the 1 year because I want to make sure when we do a bill that we come back to as a bipartisan, that way it's set for life. Why? Because I want to make sure everything's in there. We got to put in inflation. We got to put in repair of business of the school. That
Okay.
has to be important because what it is, a lot of people from one party is worrying about other stuff. We need to worry about what the real problems are.
Okay,
again,
all right. So a 1 year limit. Let's move on and let's get some other folks in here. I hear from Mr.
Well, real
Fernandez.
quickly, we
Permanently
did 30
eliminating-
seconds and then we did 10-second one. Let me just say this real quick. I still don't think he understands how that works. The aggregate spending limit is not, it just penalizes. If we got rid of it permanently, we could still every year decide how much money goes to schools. It's not like if we got rid of it, then it's like, okay, well now on autopilot and you can never increase school costs. This is something that we don't need.
Okay. Let's go on. Ms. Sandoval, we've heard a number of opinions so far. What do you think the state legislature should do to make sure Arizona public schools are properly funded?
Well, I think they should fund them. Since 2007, public schools have seen cuts in funding and they haven't been restored. Even with Prop 123, it was just, a portion of what the schools were owed, and that money didn't come out of the goodwill of the legislature, the leaders of the legislature that came out of a lawsuit. And so we must properly fund our schools. We are at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to funding, when it comes to teacher pay. And I know you didn't ask this, but I don't agree with the expansion of vouchers because it takes money away, more money that's already not given to public schools. 90% of our students attend public schools. By law, anybody that walks through the doors of a public school must be educated. Every child that walks through the doors must be educated, whether they receive funding for the child or not. Because many times on the 100th day, charter schools or other schools receive the funding from the state and then they disappear. And so what happens to those students? They need to be absorbed by the local school boards, by the local school districts, and they don't get additional funding because the funding has already been given to these charter schools that sometimes disappear. The charter schools also are not held to the same standards that public schools are. They don't play by the same playbook, right? Like the aggregate spending limit is only applicable to public schools, not to charter schools. And I agree with Mr. Fernandez, we need to get rid of that because it was holding districts hostage. My local school district was gonna lose money had this override not happen. And so, no, I don't agree with expansions, and we need to make sure we're properly funding our public schools.
Okay, and let's just clear up any doubts before they arise. The aggregate expenditure limit, would you override it for a year or do you think we should get rid of it permanently?
We need to eliminate it permanently.
Okay, all right. We'll move on to Mr. Lugo. What do you think that state government can do about public school funding and how does that relate to vouchers, the expenditure limit?
Yeah, I don't support vouchers. I think we need to provide more money to public schools. And I don't think we need to use taxpayers' money to fund private schools. I went to Gadsden Elementary School. Gadsden District 32, and I'm really proud of going to that school. I'm really proud of that school because they have really good after school activities. You know, they have mariachi, they have dance, they have banda, and they have one of the best activities in Arizona. And those are some activities that private schools doesn't have. So we need to, in my district, we need programs like that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I would like to respond to all of the three of the candidates.
Okay. Is it specific to what you said or what they said? Because I don't want responses to just start becoming an opportunity.
Oh, no, it's just in general what they said to clarify. Do you know that a charter school is a public school, correct? Okay, just making sure.
Oh.
So I believe that you're not listening to your LD 23 constituents. You know, you're taking money from the parents that are the taxpayers. And if they decide they want to move to another school, regardless charter, private, or public, that's what they're paying for. That's their taxes.
Okay.
That's their hard work money.
All right. Thank you. These are good positions. I think we've gone over them. So I want to talk about something that's relevant to Arizona families with children even before they get into our schools. Childcare and preschool costs are increasingly unaffordable and inaccessible for many folks in Arizona and across the country as well. So my question, and for this one, we're going to start with you, Mr. Garcia-Snyder, is do you think that Arizona does enough to help families afford childcare? And if not, what should it do?
I don't believe Arizona does their part to support childcare, especially from pre-K to K. You know, I was talking to one of the superintendents here in Yuma County, and we were talking about, you know, Title I funding, which is from the federal, but we went in to go in more closer because a lot of Latino families in this district are working in the fields, are working full time, and their children are going to school, or they have to spend a lot of money for childcare. To me, I believe the state should allocate money for pre-K and K. We need to make sure that our children are taken care of. That gives an opportunity for the parents to work a few hours longer to inject more economy into the family itself, but also into our rural areas, because it's very important that our children from a young age feel safe and are engaged. So I do believe we need more money for pre-K and K.
Okay, all right, thank you. And we'll go, I'm gonna apologize. I think I got the order incorrect last time, but we're gonna go next to Mr. Lugo for this question.
Yeah, I think that we need to help people, you know, working class people to have money for childcare.
Okay. All right. Ms. Sandoval, should the state be doing more for childcare and families that can't access that kind of care?
No, I absolutely do not think that the state is doing enough to provide assistance for working families for childcare or early childhood education or even full day kinder. And that is all part of like funding our education system, right? And in helping working families to provide affordable childcare. Some families earn half of their income just in childcare alone. And so, yeah, we definitely need to expand more early childhood programs. We need to fully fund kindergarten so that we can help not only the families, but also so that we can prepare the children. Preschool education has shown it helps them get ready for kindergarten. And so we're setting the kids on a solid foundation for a lifelong learning and preparing our future workforce. So if we care about our uneducated workforce, we need to start by investing in early childhood programs, affordable childcare, and full day kindergarten.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go to Mr. Fernandez. What should the state be doing about childcare?
They should be doing more. I think, you know, we need to be funding, you know, kindergarten. We need to be funding pre-K. Childcare is very expensive. And I think that when you see some of the discrepancies when it comes to student scores in school districts, and there's probably exceptions to this, what you're going to see is the less wealthy areas are just not going to do as well as the wealthy areas. And a lot of that is that the kids come in from the very beginning behind. Pre-K, those kind of things, kindergarten, these equalize the playing fields. these make sure that kids that come in that, maybe haven't been read to enough, maybe they have two parents that are working all the time, that those kids can be brought up to the same level as a kid where that may be a stay-at-home parent, or just has, other resources available. And I think that's a huge part of making sure that our education system succeeds later. Ms. Sandoval is right. A lot of employers that look for places across the country, they look for places that have good education systems, good results. And again, a lot of that is from the very beginning. You look at places like Boston. Boston spends a lot of money on their schools. They really invest in students. They really believe that the students are their resource. That is the resource that they will always have. There are other states that do this as well. We need to do that more. We need to look at our students as our kids as the resource that we're going to be able to lead the state to and carry things on.
Okay. All right, I want to change gears here. And our next question will start with Mr. Lugo. A Supreme Court ruling earlier this year kicked back regulation of abortion to the states. What's your stance on abortion, and what role do you think the Arizona legislature should play in regulating abortion access here?
Yeah, I'm endorsed by Planned Parenthood. I'm a pro-choice candidate. I think every female should have the right to have control over their body. And for those women that don't believe in abortion, it's your body, your choice. And for the women that do believe in abortion, it's their body, their choice. Me as a state representative, I will fully give the freedom for women to have power to decide over their body. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Sandoval, what role does the legislature have to play in regulating abortion in Arizona?
Absolutely no role. It is no one's business what anybody else's private healthcare decisions or choices are. It is not my business. It is not anyone's business. Those decisions are very personal and private. It should be made by the individual with their family, their partner, their doctor. We have no business regulating anybody's reproductive system. And why only women? Are we regulating men's reproductive system? Are we telling men, hey, you can only have one child, you can only impregnate one woman, you're not allowed to have more than one child with more than one woman? No, because that is not our business. We should not be involved in those decisions. Those are very private, personal choices that individuals need to be making.
Okay, we'll go to Mr. Fernandez. Where do you fall on this issue, and what can lawmakers do?
I support any person's right to have an abortion. I don't think it's my business. I don't think it's the legislature's business. I don't think it's Congress's business. And I certainly don't think it's the Supreme Court's business. Let people make decisions with their healthcare providers that are best for them. I don't know what's best for them. Thank you.
Okay, straightforward. Mr. Garcia Snyder, your views on abortion regulation and the role the state should play.
Well, I am pro-life. I do love my children. I have a boy and I have a girl. I couldn't think of anything if someone said, I'm just going to abort them right at the end of the term. I can't see that. But I do believe it's very important, especially with a law in the books that's here in Arizona. It outdated before the territorial Arizona law was made. It's about to start in September 24th. The 15 weeks is the cutoff. I believe before that it was 2 to 3 years in prison if you try to do an abortion. I believe there's exceptions. Ours seem very important. We get to look for alternatives. Life of the mother, number one. Rape, incest, very much in. So, I believe in that. I will allocate for the conception, the fetus. Someone has to stand up for that baby. We are Christian. We are a Latino-based majority in this LD 24 and 23, and we do believe in family and we believe in God. Y familia, comunidad, we don't believe in abortion. That is not our faith.
Okay.
That is not our love.
I'm going to address that.
Okay. I want to quickly follow up, Mr. Fernandez. I'm going to quickly follow up with him. In fact, because there was, I had a little trouble. I don't know if the rest of your screens were cutting in and out, but I just want to clarify what you've already said. It sounds like you're saying that you support the pre-statehood complete ban that could go into effect in Arizona. Is that right?
No, I'm just stating what the ban is coming in was a legislature before the territorial Arizona law came in. Now, I do believe in conception. That's when I believe that the law should be except three exceptions: mother's health, rape, and incest. I do believe those are very important, but we have to allocate for the child itself. You know, we're Latinos in our community. Yo, familia, comunidad, Dios.
You know, I want to say something. I don't think those are the values of the Latino community and my community. You know, I think we're very respectful. We respect each other's decision. And I think it's very selfish for a male to tell a female what to do with their body.
Excuse me, Mr. Lugo, I was still talking, so I would appreciate you show respect until I finish. Thank you, sir. So like I said, I'm a father with 2 children. You know, I can't say that I will say I accept that. No, I believe pro-life, and I will stand on that.
Okay, are you done, Mr. Snyder?
Yes, Mr. Bryan.
All right, Mr. Bryan. Yeah, so I don't think that whether you love your children and family, whether anyone loves their children and family, has anything to do with being pro-life or anything else. You can love your family and still not want to force a woman to do something that she does not want to do. And I firmly believe that. I think that having a person knows what's best for them, and I don't know what's best for them. I would not want to put myself in anyone else's shoes under any circumstances, particularly that. So I really appreciate that you love your kids, and I'm glad that you do. I'm glad that you love your family. That's really, really important, and that you have these values. That's great. But I really take exception to the fact that somehow someone that believes differently doesn't love their children and their families.
I'd like to add to that. I agree with your statement, Mr. Fernandez. And I too, I am Latina. I too have children. I too love my children. I am a practicing Catholic, but I would not want someone else to push their faith or values on me, regardless of their religion. And although I believe that, doesn't mean everyone else believes that. And I have no right to tell someone else what to do with their personal and private health choices.
Okay, all right. I appreciate the talk on values around this. I want to come back and ask some follow-up questions about potential laws. So first, for Mr. Garcia Snyder, you've talked some of the laws that exist in Arizona, and you've mentioned you believe there should be some exceptions for rape, incest, and the health of the mother. Would you vote in the legislature for a law that weakens the pre-statehood ban on abortions, which doesn't include those exceptions?
Nick, can you respond again? I got only a few of those words.
You're breaking up.
Sorry, okay, I apologize. I haven't had trouble with my internet before. I'm going to try to speak slowly.
Okay.
Can you understand me now? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so you said that you think that in cases of rape, incest, and where the mother's health is endangered, you think abortion should be permitted. In the legislature, would you vote for a law that enshrines those exceptions because the pre-statehood ban doesn't include those?
Yes, sir, I would.
Okay, all right. And then I want to go for the 3 Democrats that we have here tonight. Do you think that there are any restrictions that should be instituted in Arizona on abortion access? We'll go in the same order, so we'll go to Mr. Lugo. Any restrictions the state should place?
No, that's up to the female to have control over their body. As a state representative, I will fight hard for women's rights.
Okay. Ms. Sandoval, what's your stance on this?
I think I've made it very clear. Again, I don't think that the government has any business intruding in people's personal health choices.
Mr. Fernandez, are you in the same camp on this one?
I completely agree.
Okay.
I
All
would
right. I want
like to respond for about 10 seconds. Yep. I do appreciate you guys' opinion, and that's what this panel is here for. But I didn't hear anyone talk about advocate for the child's rights. You know, if we knew no one's going to do it, that's what we're doing, is advocating for the child as well.
Okay. All right. I want to move on to another question about healthcare. In addition to teachers, healthcare workers are professionals that Arizona sometimes struggles to attract. and particularly rural hospitals struggle with staffing shortages. So is there something that the legislature can do to ensure that our rural healthcare facilities are adequately staffed? We'll start with Ms. Sandoval on this one.
Yes, thank you for that question. Absolutely. I think that we can do more as far as providing incentives, providing loan relief for people that want to go into that field, and especially in rural areas, like as in Yuma. I was having conversations with people down there, and they have trouble finding specialists for different kinds of specialists down there, because not many people want to live down there in rural areas and practice down there. And so they have a hard time accessing healthcare. And so I think expanding not only our educational facilities to provide more training and produce more healthcare professionals, but also assisting with educational grants that will attract and allow more professionals to, so that we can grow more professionals in Arizona in the healthcare field.
Okay. Mr. Fernandez, what can the state do to support our rural healthcare facilities?
Okay, and I agree completely with Ms. Sandoval. So one of the big things that we did, for the past, 20 years, 30 years, is that we've cut funding to our universities. I think that we need to go to our universities, go to our community colleges, and we're doing that in Yuma. To a certain extent, we're beginning. Ms. Osborne passed the bill that it's statewide, but would help training of nurses, which is great. Arizona Western College, Dr. Corr has been doing some amazing stuff with Yuma Regional Medical Center when it comes to nurses. But the biggest thing that we could do is provide more funding to our universities and our community colleges so they can train these people. It's very difficult, and this, I'm going to segue a little bit. This goes back to the money that I was able to secure for NAU for training. Now, these are engineers, manufacturing, accounting, these kind of things, but it's the same principle. It's very difficult to get people, if you graduate from MIT or if you graduate from NYU, right, to come to Yuma, Arizona, or to come to Somerton, or to come to Gadsden. The reality is it's just a culture shock. When they do come, typically they don't last that long because it's so different than what they're used to. But if we're training our homegrown kids, if we're investing in them, investing in their futures, not only will they have a great paying career at the end of that road, but we're also going to make sure that they're going to stay and that they're going to be able to have their families there. And the parents want that too. Parents want to make sure, I believe, that their kids have the opportunity to have great careers and grow their families right in their community. Instead of having to go to, let's say, a college, whether it be ASU or whether it be UCLA, for instance, and then going off somewhere, a third location for their career. And I think that's really important. So I would like to invest more in that.
Okay. All right. Mr. Lugo, Mr. Garcia-Snyder, excuse me. We're going to go to you. We're here and talk about creating pipelines for healthcare workers. What are your thoughts on what the state can do in this area?
Now, it is important, like I said, it starts from elementary, secondary to high school with programs on the side to show them where to go, empower them to stay in, go to local community colleges, to four-year colleges. But most importantly, we want them to stay and treat and create our new professionals. Now, there's a way that we need to go further because everyone's talking about education. Attraction is, for example, YMCA, they have a housing for them down there in Yuma County to attract traveling nurses, to attract doctors. We need to focus more on infrastructure, especially with inflation, the house of costing. It's expensive. How are you going to come to Yuma County, which is not as expensive as other counties, and not find a house? Because we're in a unique area where we're about 150,000 people. But once November hits, we have winter visitors coming in. We have tracks. We have YPG. We have a lot of people that puts us up about $300 and something thousand. Now we have winter visitors that own a lot of these houses that they're just vacant until they come back for the winter. So there's really no houses available in Yuma County. We need more infrastructure, working with the colleges, working with the hospitals to make sure we have enough locations to put these nurses, put these specialists, and put these doctors. And that's just Yuma County. Now we go through Maricopa, which is the highest inflation in housing and rental We need to make sure we're working together from the state to the colleges and to the local, usually they're private owned hospitals. We need to make sure that we're taking care of that number, because with COVID, they were dropping by a lot because it's just the stress. There's a lot of mental issues right there. And we need to make sure they're secure. We got to make sure that they are safe. Number one, our medical is safe.
All right, and finally, we'll go to Mr. Lugo. Rural hospital staffing, what does the state need to do? And you're on mute right now.
We need to provide more scholarships to rural communities. You know, I'm really proud of my district of San Luis, Arizona, Gadsden, Yuma, Somerton. AWC has done a lot for my community. They have a nursing school. There's a local clinic, San Luis Clinic, that has courses for nurse assistant, medical assistant. So that's helping a lot in my community. I think we need to continue to develop those opportunities for people from my community to have better jobs and better experience. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I want to talk about an issue that's geographically proximate to a lot of this district, and that's the Arizona-Mexico border. Lawmakers this year added more than $500 million of state funding for border security projects. And in the last few weeks, our governor, Doug Ducey, has spent $6 million to put shipping containers along gaps in the border wall near Yuma. Is this, and what do you think that money that's now been appropriated for border security should be used for? We'll go with this. I believe our first respondent is going to be Mr. Fernandez.
Yeah, I was going to say, I couldn't hear you. After you said, is this, you were cut off.
I was cut off while I was speaking.
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. I'm gonna go through.
Oh, wow.
I hope it's the storm that's doing this, but lawmakers this year added more than $500 million of state funding for border security projects. And in the last few weeks, Doug Ducey put $6 million towards putting up shipping containers along gaps in the border wall in a few locations near Yuma. So the question is, are these wise investments of state money? And how do you think that approximately $500 million of border security money should be used going forward?
Okay, so I'm first, I believe. Thank you. I don't think that this is a wise decision. The $500 million, you know, I was in the room when that number was decided. And really it wasn't, they were looking for something to spend money on so they could say they were tough on border security. When I say they, I mean the many of the Republican legislators. There wasn't really any idea. And I remember going into rooms and everyone asking like, what, you know, we have money. What are we going to spend this money on for border security? And so they decided like a wall. And that was just like, you know, okay, let's put up a wall. It sounds good. The problem with that is that we don't own a lot of that land. A lot of that land belongs to, it's either federal land, it can be tribal nation land. I've heard recently that even Cocopah is saying that they don't want those. It's actually causing some secondary issues. I don't believe it's wise, you know, for us to be spending money on this kind of thing. But I do think that we need to secure the border. But I just think that's a federal issue. And, you know, when it comes, I know people will try to be partisan on this issue, but we've had 4 administrations, 2 Democratic and 2 Republican, at the last 4, and they had unilateral control for 2 years, and they didn't find a solution. That, you know, that was Trump, that was, you know, Bush, Obama, and Clinton. So you know, yes, you know, it does sound great to have a secure border, and I think that we should have it. But I think that we also need immigration reform, and these are all federal issues. That's it for me.
Okay, Mr. Garcia Snyder, is this a good appropriation from the legislature?
Gary, he called on you.
Yeah, it froze on this side.
I know, he's phrasing up and down. He's still frozen.
So I believe the question is, do you believe the Connex boxes was a good waste of the $500,000 correct?
500 million, yes.
Half a billion. Then the second question was, what would you use with that resource, correct?
Good enough, yeah.
Okay, I guess Nick's not talking.
Yeah, but I'll do it. Go ahead.
Well, to be honest, I'm the
I hear
one
you
that's-
guys now, you're coming in and out,
Okay,
but the
To be honest,
questions,
yeah.
the
I'll-
questions were, do you think the $500 million for border security was a good investment, the $6 million for the shipping containers? And for that $500 million that hasn't been specifically to use, what do you think it should be used for?
Well, first off, I back the blue. I believe in our green as well. You know, I'm out of all these candidates here, I'd be at the border since his last year and a half. You know, Lugo says he lives in Gadsden. He hasn't lived there. You know, he doesn't live there. Now, when we talk about the border itself and the wall, there's already a previous wall before a few of the administrations talked about. He didn't mention Biden. Biden right now is in power, and the wall and the people coming through is just coming through. There's a lot of people there. We're the first ones to go there, get people to pick up trash because they're stepping on a tribal land, but most importantly, they're stepping on our agriculture. Our agriculture, a lot of money has been lost. Why? Because when you step on that land, it's contaminated. You gotta close it off 10 by 10. So there's a lot of money, a lot of safety issues as well, where we're worried about because you say it's federal, Mr. Fernandez, but this is inside the border wall is state and community. Now, when you have people walking to people's houses in Gadsden, Arizona, that I talked to them today, they're all mad because a lot of them are jumping in the backyard and living there and then calling, or like Mr. Gardias right there on Gadsden. He's been there forever since the Gadsden purchase. He has people coming to his house at 12 o'clock at night, knocking on the door, asking for an address so they can call the Uber. Do you think they feel safe? Do you think there's security there? No, there's not. So that money allocated is to pay for Stone Garden, to pay for local people, local sheriffs and police officers. And you being, all three of you being Planned Parenthood would now have to defund the police as well. So for you to say that you back the blue and want security, that's just a lie. We live here, I live here, I see it every day. I'm on the calls with these people crossing, and there's a lot of fentanyl, a lot of drugs going through there. Now, our children is very important. A lot of them are crossing from Mexico. Now, do I say people are crossing, they're bad? No, I'm just saying there's a lot of drugs coming through and there's a lot of criminals coming through, and the security of our communities, our resources are under. They're not
Okay.
exactly safe, as you call it.
Okay.
Now, the Connex boxes is the question. Do I believe it was fair? Do I believe it was worth the money? No, I don't, because they're coming through the tribal lands. Because there's no Connex boxes there. There's a few that Coca has talked about, but that doesn't
Okay,
cover the
okay.
whole land.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia Snyder.
Thank you.
We can disagree on policies and remain respectful of people's views. Let's move on to Mr. Lugo on this issue.
Yeah, you know, I used to work as an admin immigration shelter, so I have a lot of compassion, a lot of empathy for those immigrants. Those immigrants are turning themselves in. They're asking for asylum, so I don't think a border wall is making any difference. I think we need to have more compassion, more empathy for those immigrants. Instead of taking pictures and posting it online and saying that you're a Republican, I think you gotta have a better heart and care more about people, you know, because if you hear their stories, you hear everything they went through in order for them to ask for asylum, I think you're gonna have a better heart and have more compassion. But yeah, I think that's a waste of money. You know, I really don't support. I'm a social worker. You know, I know substance abuse is a big issue in our community. If we really want to have an impact in the drug issue and the drug war, I think we need to focus on the port of entry and put more money in the port of entry, put better technology in the port of entry so drugs don't flow to the United States. But the border, you know, all those people, they're looking for a better life, better opportunity. And it's pretty sad to see people from my community, like Gary Snyder, to talk bad about immigrants and say that they're criminals and there's a pledge and a lot of bad things about them. And I don't support that.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm sure
And I
we'll
do
have a
live in
response in
Gadsden,
just a moment. I'm
Arizona.
going to circle back. I want to give Ms. Sandoval.
Oh, one second. I live in Gadsden, Arizona. Behind my house is the border, and I never seen an immigrant knock at my door and ask for any address, ask for the phone. I never seen
Okay,
that.
all right. Ms. Sandoval, we're talking about massive amounts of state money that's been appropriated for border security. What do you think about these projects, and in particular the shipping containers?
Right. So the question was whether we believe that that was a good investment. And the short answer is no. I think we need to be, I think, a better use of that, and for many reasons. I recently met with Chairman Norris of the Tohono O'odham Nation, and their tribe, half of it is in Mexico, half of it is in the U.S. When they go and build these walls and put these containers, they are very disrespectful to tribal nation land, and a lot of times they are overstepping sacred burial sites and sacred land for the natives. And aside from that, nobody wants criminals. Nobody wants drugs. Of course, we don't want all those drugs coming in. Of course, we don't want criminals in our neighborhoods. Nobody wants that. But I think we need to look at the root cause and maybe use that money to find out what is the root cause of migration. Why are these people wanting to migrate here? What a lot of those issues that are happening in Central America and all these countries where these refugees are coming from were started and caused by our own country. And so I think we need to look at the root cause of migration and address or use some of that funding to address those issues. And when we are gonna, and I agree with Mr. Lugo, we need to invest in better technology at the ports of entry so that drugs aren't coming in, to make sure that we're screening for people, the criminals don't come into the country, because nobody wants that in their neighborhood. Nobody does.
Okay.
But overall, no, I don't think it was a good use of the money.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Let me just
Yes,
respond
we'll
real
have
quick.
some responses, please, Mr.
Yes.
Fernandez.
So, and I completely agree with Ms. Sandoval, and I think that this is something that we don't talk about enough. I travel a lot for work, and so I spend a lot of time in Europe and Mexico City as well. What I've seen is that, post World War II, the U.S. government invested a lot of money in several economies: Poland, Germany, Japan. The reason why was we wanted to make sure that they would be safe democracies, that we felt like if they were poor, that something bad was going to happen. Either they would start a war, something would happen. We've ignored a lot of these countries in Central America where most of the migrants are coming from now. We just let them go. What we could be doing, if we really wanted to, is invest money in their economies, build factories, allow them to start, and the people would want to return, first of all. But second of all, we could be trading with them versus China. We could be spending our money buying products that are made in a refrigerator or whatever else that are made in El Salvador or Guatemala. And that would do too is it would increase the safety of our geopolitically of Central America, North America, South America. Those are the kind of positive things that I think that we can be spending money on. These are large amounts of money, don't get me wrong. I don't want to trivialize that. But I think that spending money on a border wall just to show people that we think we're tough on crime, that's silly.
Okay, all right. Mr. Garcia Snyder, go ahead. I know your name was mentioned there, so I do want to give you a chance, and then I want to move on to another question. So go ahead. Let's keep it quick.
I'd mentioned from Lugo, same videos. You actually have to be here at the border to understand and actually talk to them. If you see my YouTube videos, I've talked to more than 150 people in Spanish, asking them about their journeys, anything happened to them, stuff like that, in a neutral phase, not because of the Republican, not because of the Democrat, but I wanted to hear their travels, regardless of what country they're from. In no way did I disrespect them. On top of that, most importantly, Ms. Sandoval, I believe you forgot something very important. To you threw the commercial port and the port of entry in there, give them more money. That's a federal identity. That's not state. Mr. Fernandez, you're talking about invest in different countries. I think investing in Arizona is economy and families is more important than worrying about investing in other countries first. I think our families here in Arizona and the United States that are striving to survive and put food on the table is most important. But the biggest reason there's money for safety is fentanyl. That is the biggest killer right now. And if you don't know a kid or a family member that's died, I know 3 that's died here in San Luis, Arizona. So to me, that is a crisis. And if you're not willing to step up, I will.
Okay, all right, we had two folks
I
whose
would
names
like
were
to
mentioned, so
respond
let's.
to-
No,
Yes,
he said three of us, so
absolutely.
we're not gonna let that go.
Absolutely.
So
Let's please keep to just clarify your own position here if you were mentioned there.
Well,
and then
no,
we can
yeah,
move on.
no, I'm gonna
Right,
go.
so one of the
Oh, you're
One of
first?
the things that you mentioned was the money invested, right? This is not money, this is not extra money that we're trying to invest. You're asked whether the money that was invested was a good investment. So I'm saying no, it wasn't. Whether it's federal or state, it wasn't. That's, I want to
Okay.
clarify that. I'm not saying I want to spend extra money. The question was the money already spent. Was it a good idea? No, it wasn't.
Okay, all right.
Okay, let me
Mr.
say
Fernandez,
this. Yes,
please,
thanks.
quickly.
So I
I want to
appreciate,
say something.
and just a second,
Okay.
I appreciate that Mr. Snyder, Mr. Garcia Snyder, I appreciate that he wants to build a TripAdvisor and a travel guide for these folks. But what I think the real question is what are we getting for the money? And the reality is we're not getting anything. It's just for show. We were talking earlier about pre-K, about kindergarten. Imagine if we invested that money that we're talking about, and we invested that money into something like that. We would start seeing dividends instead of nothing, instead of walls falling. I mean, I'm watching videos of people climbing those shipping containers. So it doesn't really make a difference.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mr.
Can I say
Lugo,
something too?
5 seconds, and then I have another question that's going to allow us to build more on this extremely important subject, but very, very briefly, because you're the only one who hasn't responded.
Okay, and I seen your videos, Gary, and all your videos are downgrading immigrants, making fun of immigrants and talking bad about immigrants, and that's something that I don't respect. As an admin immigration shelter, I talked to around 10 to 20,000 immigrants and heard their stories. That's why I care about them and have compassion with them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. It sounds like there's some
sorry,
videos
Nick.
out there on the internet, and I obviously would encourage anyone who's watching this to go and view those for themselves, and they can make their own opinions about them. But I want to move on.
Nick,
I
didn't hear what Jesus said. It's cutting off.
He said that he shares a different opinion about immigrants than the one that he sees portrayed in your videos, and I would encourage everyone to go out and watch those videos and make up their own mind. So
I appreciate
want to
the
move on. I want to move on to our next question, and that's again about what the state legislature can do with regard to immigration. So the legislature has weighed in on various forms of support that the state can provide to undocumented residents, whether they're students, workers, members of families. So my question is, what, if anything, do you think should change in the support that the state offers to undocumented residents? And I apologize if I get this wrong, but I believe the first response is going to come from Mr. Garcia Snyder on this one. And I'm going to put this in the chat as well for anyone who wants to check.
So the chat that you sent was all that was only text. Was there more? 'Cause I only saw small
That's
section.
the question. What, if anything, do you think should change in the support that the state offers to undocumented residents?
Okay. So you're talking about DACA?
That's certainly
That's what you're asking. Of
one population that's here. So
Okay.
you're first, Mr. Garcia Snyder. What do you think?
course, that's a very important question. I do believe that is response. I know a lot of people that are DACA. I know a lot of people that were brought to the country as young children illegally, but now they are hardworking people. They're in colleges. They're working hard. It's a workforce that we need. Now, if you ask me the question, will I support? I want to make sure everything in the bills as a legislature, as a state, will work for everyone. Because the reason why is if we only focus on saying yes or no, we're not getting to the main question. Because the root of the question is how many people are coming into the United States, and they're either going to Florida or either going to Washington, D.C. We need to make legislation as a state to work together, because this is a point that you say Republican, you say Democrat. We need to be bipartisan to work with the people that we already have here, because they're great people. They're educated. They're hard workers. And I want to make sure when we do a bill secure. We don't want to be fighting every year, every 2 years about an issue that is very important to my heart. So I believe I will work across the aisle to make sure the bill is taken care of.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to Mr. Lugo. Is the state doing the right things to support its undocumented residents? Do you think anything should change?
I think we gotta have more compassion and more resources for them, and treat them in a humane manner. If we want to talk about, I think we need to develop an immigration reform that's a federal level. But as a statewide, we gotta treat people, immigrants with respect. Those immigrants going to the detention center, they're getting treated in very horrible conditions. They're getting treated as criminals, and most of those people that are asking for asylum, they've never been to prison, they've never been to the consider of criminals. So I think as a state, I would fight hard for them to have the resources necessary and to treat them right with respect.
Okay, all right, thank you. Ms. Sandoval, where do you stand on this issue?
Immigration is a very complicated issue. We have a lot of families living in our country of mixed status. You have undocumented married US citizens, or you have undocumented with US citizen children. And then you also have those children that were brought here as through no fault of their own, through the border, and who grew up here and they know no other country but the United States. We have spent a lot of money already educating these children, right? From K through 12. We've already made that investment. So it would be an unwise business decision to not continue to support their higher ed goals or dreams or aspirations. And so I think they definitely should have the same access to in-state tuition as our other students that went through our public school systems here. I think that we should absolutely allow them to continue higher ed, especially if they want to go into any of these areas that where we need the workforce, educators, nurses, doctors. I think that we should allow them to have access to in-state tuition in our state.
Okay, right. And finally, Mr. Fernandez.
I agree with Ms. Sandoval. I think, let me just say, like, I didn't understand what Mr. Snyder said. I didn't know what he meant. But I will say that I agree completely with Ms. Sandoval. I think that we should feel grateful that we have a country where people want to come. You look at a lot of countries throughout the world. Let's look at Russia. They're losing population. They lost 1 million people last year. 1 million people. I mean, that's a lot. And they lost it because their best and brightest are leaving. And no one wants to go there. We don't want that. We don't want that here. We want to have a country where we attract people here, the best and brightest, and we're already doing that. We attract people that want to start their education here, that want to start a life here, because we need the labor. We need it if we want to really grow. You look at every restaurant that, for a long time, and it's a little bit less so now, but every restaurant you go to has a help wanted sign. Every place I've talked to, every owner of small business I've talked to, they're one of their biggest challenges. It's not taxes. It's not, any kind of regulation. It's just finding quality people to work there. We need more of them. And I think that we can do it safely. We can do it while having a secure border, but we need to make sure that we're not making these people a second-class citizen.
Okay.
I'd like to respond, Nick.
Yeah. Very briefly, he mentioned something about your plan. So let's just keep it quick to just clarifying what you just said and leave it at that, please.
Okay. So my plan was basically, I do agree. I want to take care of the people that are here that are DACA. We need to make sure we do a bill bipartisan to work together to make sure that these DACAs is taken care of. They are respected and they will be our new professionals. That's what I was saying. The second question is, I do agree with Mr. Fernandez, workforce is low. I just toured in Phoenix 2 manufacturer plants that are having issues with retaining employees and most importantly, employment. Right now, I'm bringing them to San Luis, Arizona, because we have the employees here, especially with the water crisis going down, and they have to, instead of doing 3 or 2 crops, now they're doing 1 to 2. So what happens? That workforce becomes unemployed. We need to make sure that they have an opportunity to work.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned water issues because that's what I want to get into next in our final section tonight. So Arizona's water supply from the Colorado River has been severely curtailed. There's going to be additional cuts coming in 2023 due to the ongoing drought. where and how do you think that the state can find additional water supply? And does the state need to implement conservation measures too? And we'll start with Mr. Lugo on this one. And you're still on mute, Mr. Lugo. There we go.
I think water is a big issue here in Arizona, and we do need to improve our technology in agriculture, and we also gotta use conservation in our rural areas.
Okay, all right, thank you. Ms. Sandoval.
There's several things we can do, and absolutely, and speaking with some of the folks that work in this area, one of the biggest things that we must do as a state is conserve. We have seen in the past couple of months several articles in the Arizona Republic outlining some businesses like golf courses that are using more water than they should. They're not staying within their allocated limits. We have also learned about the land that is being leased to the Saudis to grow alfalfa and how we're literally giving our water away. And so we need to fund the Arizona Department of Water Resources. We need to update statutes in that don't allow these kinds of things to happen with our water. But our main priority should be focused on incentivizing conservation. In last month, I think we attended the Yuma County Farmers Annual Meeting, and they talked about this issue, the fact that water is scarce, and we have a big problem in how farmers are being paid to not farm because they want to focus on conservation. And so I think we all collectively as a state need to come up with some incentives so that we make sure that everyone in our state is doing their part by conserving in working together to solve this water crisis.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fernandez, where can we get more water for Arizona? Do we need to be doing more on the conservation front?
Thank you. This is a really important issue for Yuma. I'm really glad it was part of the Bank of Questions. So the water bill, let's talk about that. When that first came out, Governor Ducey just wanted to put $1 billion in a fund and just let a group of his handpicked people spend it however they like. There was talk of a desal plant, which for a lot of reasons I don't think is very practical. But what we did is we negotiated with them, and we were able to get $200 million. There's actually more available than that now for conservation. Let's be clear, we can't conserve ourselves out of this crisis. We cannot. But there's a lot that we can do. 50% of the water that's used in the typical household is used outside. That's all lost. That's not reclaimed. That water goes in the ground, it evaporates, but it doesn't ever find its way to the aquifer. So in a house, you're indoor, like that's where we need to focus. And a lot of cities are already doing that. We're already seeing a lot of water recycling. That's really important. But one of the things that we did in the fund is we're allowing for grants that are going to be channeled through municipalities, through your cities, that are going to allow you to get money back for turning your lawn into xeriscape. Really important. Those are huge. Let's go to ag. So the majority of water is used by ag, but agriculture is so important to our state and so important to our country. Yuma County, we've been very, very fortunate. We have been conserving water. Our ag has been conserving water for many, many years. We were ditch lining in the 80s, putting cement in ditches so that you wouldn't have the seepage into the ground. This is something that a lot of places, we take it for granted because we see it everywhere in Yuma, but a lot of places in our state and throughout the country do not do that. We need to do more of that. We need to allow everyone else to catch up on that, and we're going to do that. As far as the water augmentation, bringing water into Arizona, that's challenging. That's expensive. It's possible, and we should be looking to do that. But there's a lot we can do before we get to that point. The Water Authority, the money that we put in there, it's a great start. It's not finished, but it's a great start. We're going to have people that know far more about water than I do, exploring those options, cost benefit, figuring out like what the best way, what the best method and best source is. And I look forward to those discussions next year.
Okay. All right, and our last, Mr. Garcia-Snyder, the state's water supply, where can we add to it, and does it need to be further conserved?
It needs to be conserved. We need to start with us as a households, we need to recommend, people usually when they wash their dishes, they leave it running. Those are little tips that we can start doing. Also, lawns outside, we need to go to synthetic. We need to get grants. If anyone wants to do synthetic, then we do synthetic grass. My house has synthetic grass. I've had it for 6 years. More importantly, we need to focus on who wants a desert landscape. That's what we can do to conserve water. People want to go wash cars. You know what? We got to wash it at a location because the cost of the water is very important. We need to make sure that we're focused on rainwater as well within our housing units. Very important. Now, when we go towards the water bill, we're glad that we got the 200 million that Mr. Fernandez talked about. Glad we have the WIFA, very important forest management. There's a lot of trees up there. We're having 300 per acre. We can drop it down a little bit lower, but very important. We need to think about short-term and long-term. Right now, we can put green plants inside of the metropolitan area to help offset the carbon, but most importantly, the heat islands. We can also work with, we have the desalination plant here in Yuma County, but you know what? It's very expensive. You're talking about paying $2,000 a square foot to agriculture when they can only afford 300 a square foot. It's a lot of cost. Now we're talking about bringing augmentation from the Rockies or from the Mississippi. That is very expensive, but is doable. It's a long-term plan. So there's a big difference between long-term and short terms. Now, what I'm worried about, I want the modern stuff. What's going to help us out coming up and long-term? There's a new APV, coming up. It's a new way to farm in Arizona. You have solar powers over the crops. What it is, the crops they're humid, so they need more water. But when the solar plants can move, they can do the duration of the light size duration. And what it is from there, the crops grow faster, healthier, and most important, less water. But on top of that, the solar panels have an exchange and a megapod that helps farm equipment that is EV use energy as well. So those are stuff that I'm interested in and going for because solar power is expensive, very expensive, but it's what we need. We have plenty of sun here in Arizona, plenty of rays, and for someone that used to have a solar business, I know what it needs and what it takes. That's why a majority of our houses have our solar on top of the house because we want to help offset the grid costs. Now, remember, the cost itself is going into either SRP, APS, it's a government-funded subsidy account.
Okay, all right. I want to get to one more question about water this evening, and then we're going to move into our closing statements. So some rural areas across Arizona want to step in and regulate groundwater use in their area. We have active management areas in the state, but they only cover our major population centers for now. So my question is, do you support this idea, and how should the state manage groundwater in rural areas? Our first for this question will be Ms. Sandoval.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry, can you read? Well, I guess
it's in the chat.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we should, especially in rural areas where there's a lot of farming, I think that we should talk to the farmers and work with the farmers and see what works best for them. I know that Mr. Garcia Snyder mentioned a lot of technology in farming, which I too support. I think that there's a lot of technology that will conserve water. There's better ways of farming, which will conserve more water. But I think those are issues that we need to address with them and talk with them and see what's best for them because they're the experts. And that's one of the things that I learned from attending that meeting with the farmers. And they know, they've been doing this a long time. They know the importance of water. They know what works for them and what's best for them. And I think we need to be consulting with them and figuring out what's best for them since they've been doing this a long time. And agriculture is a very vital and important part of our state's economy.
Okay,
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, rural groundwater management, what should the state do?
I think that we need to have rural ground management. We have it in Maricopa County. We need to have it throughout the state. There's one other. We need to have it. Their communities are asking for it. And I would say, first of all, if a community wants something, I don't think it's in the state's purview to say no. I think that we should allow these communities to do what is right in their area. But not having rural management, that's where we've gotten the Saudi farms that, you know, people talk about. You know, I think there's been some other companies that have come in, pumped water, and then left. It's a real problem, and it's a real problem because we don't have any regulation there, and the people know that. There's a subdivision that's being built far west of Phoenix, close to Palo Verde. They built it there. It's land that was just vacant. They built it there because they knew that there was no water regulation. Now there's no water there, but what their plan is just to build the houses and then just say that's someone else's problem, and then know that that neighborhood, you know, it's going to be a lot of people are going to go, you know, talk to their legislators, talk to the county supervisors, and force them to channel water out there. These are things that we can't continue doing. It's not sustainable. It really wasn't sustainable 20 years ago, but it's certainly not sustainable now. So long story short, I am very much in favor of rural management for water.
Okay. Mr. Garcia Snyder, what do you think about rural groundwater management?
Well, I'm glad that Brian jumped into development for rural areas, either construction, housing, or commercial property. They need to have allocated water. They need to touch the underground water or the basin. So before that, I think we need to worry about three things. You know, it's going to be contamination, depletion, and substance. We need to know the quality of the water that's in the ground. Now, we do not have any management to tell us the stats, how much water is underneath, and if it's good, if it's bad, if it's what the data is. Now, there's a bill that just passed, obviously Mr. Fernandez should have said, was 2467, where it measured the groundwater heavy use to check and evaluate. We need to make sure that we have bills for rural areas where they're checking the data of how much water is underground, and is it substance contamination or is it clear? Because a lot of these people that live in rural areas that are not part of the city of Yuma County or in these areas are on well water, underground water as well. We need to make sure the water is clean. We need to understand what's in the ground. So I do believe that we need regulation, and it has to be locally, but most importantly, us as legislators need to write a bill that asks for data, because that data tells us a lot. With this data, we can help local government, local agriculture, or even developers understand what we have there, if it's a huge cost, and what we need to do to get this water. Because the river water is untouchable. Groundwater, there's no regulation on it. We need to make sure at the state level, the data's there.
Okay, Mr. Fernandez, you mentioned, did you want to just very quickly before we move on to Mr. Lugo?
I'm fine with my answer.
Okay, cool. We'll go to Mr. Lugo. What do you think about groundwater management for rural areas of Arizona?
Yeah, I think it should be local. I think local cities, local counties should be able to have control and regulate those waters.
Okay. All right. Then we'll go ahead and move on to closing statements this evening. And I'd like to have these in the opposite order of our opening statements. So that means that we're going to start with Ms. Sandoval, and we'll give everybody 1 minute. Okay.
Great. Thanks. Again, I'd like to thank, I'd like to start by thanking our moderator, Nick Phillips. Thank you, Nick. You've done a fabulous job tonight. And also, I want to thank the Clean Elections Commission for organizing this debate. And thank you to all those running, all the viewers, and a very special thanks to my team and all our amazing volunteers from every corner of our district, from Goodyear, Buckeye, San Luis, Somerton, Yuma, Ajo, Tucson. Your work has really energized voters, has helped me get here today. And speaking of voters, I also want to thank the 11,000 plus voters that came out to support me on August 2nd. I'm counting on you this November 8th, so please don't forget to vote and remind your families and friends to vote Mariana Sandoval. And everyone deserves an opportunity for a better life. This includes better paying jobs, quality education, affordable healthcare, and access to clean air and water. These are the issues that are important to our families, and these are the issues that I want to go to the state legislature to work on. So if these issues matter to you, I invite you, voters of LD23, to help me build a better future together for all of us by voting Mariana Sandoval this November. I would be honored to serve you as your next state representative, and I hope I can earn your vote. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Sandoval. We'll go to Mr. Lugo for your closing statement.
I want to thank Clean Election for this opportunity. And I would like to thank every viewer here for the opportunity to listen to our debate. I'm a social worker. I care a lot about my community. I care a lot about the people in Arizona, and I will do everything in my power to provide them with resources, the opportunity for them to be successful. And this November is very important for everybody to vote Democrat. Vote for people that have compassion, people that care about other people. Do your research. Don't vote for people that profit and recording vulnerable people like immigrants, and don't vote for people that have a history of treating women not fair. Thank you very much, and vote for me in November. And thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lugo. Mr. Garcia Snyder, your closing statement.
Good evening. Thank you for staying with us for about an hour and a half. I'd like to thank Clean Elections, Nick, and most importantly, our constituents that listen. As you notice a few different views, but you also notice we had more commonalities on certain topics, which that's very important because you need to understand where we stand on certain topics and where we are far away. Me as an LD3 candidate nominee, I have been traveling the whole state of Arizona, 33,000 miles in my year and a half in this campaign. I've knocked doors, I've called, I've helped out the communities that I serve. But most importantly, I knock doors and I call in person, even in our backyard where there's candidates that haven't knocked doors. I've knocked 3,876 doors. I made 11,000 calls with my crew and me about 4,000 calls as well, in English and Spanish, because we have the language barrier that's very important. We have first generation, second generation, third generation Mexican Americans that don't speak English. Some of them will have the issue with the language barrier and feel more comfortable in Spanish. So le doy muchas gracias a toda la gente que está escuchando y Dios bendiga contigo. What I am all about is listening to our community, and our communities are telling me they can't survive. They can't survive with this inflation. The most important thing, we need to help out our Arizona families now. And to me, the Arizona family way of life is at risk. And we need to make sure that you don't vote on a Republican or a Democratic ticket, you vote on the person that's going to get stuff done. Now, you look at the past 4 or 5 years, 6 years in legislations that's been in our district, and they're not helping us. They haven't been there. So you need new candidates, new people that are real, that understand what medium class money is. I've been making around $50,000 with my family, wife, 2 kids, house, mortgage. We understand what the inflation is. What is the price of eggs at $3.39? That's just ridiculous. We deserve better, and my constituents deserve better in this community. Muchas gracias. Buenas noches. Make sure to vote Gary Garcia Snyder, Snyder4Arizona.com, and most importantly, Dios esté contigo y vamos adelante.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garcia Snyder. And for our last closing statement, we'll go to Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you. First, thank you to Clean Elections. Thank you for all the folks watching. Thank you for the candidates running. Thank you to my team, who's working very hard as we speak, making sure that our voice gets out there. I'm not a politician, and I started with this, but I'm not someone that was seeking to run for this office. I'm not someone that was looking to get my name in lights. I'm someone that wants to see a better Arizona. I want to see a place where we can grow. A family can come here and live the American dream, or the Arizona dream, if you will. That's why in my first session, just a few short months, I worked to ensure that we had transportation projects, Cesar Chavez, 95, education projects, the U of A extension, as well as NAU. And then, in addition, the money that went to education, K through 12, as well as the money for the water bill, which I think is crucial for our future. I want to live in an Arizona where a young man, a young woman can grow up and know that the sky is the limit, and they don't have to go off anywhere else to college, that good jobs will be available near them, that they can come and start a family. These are the things that I think all of us can agree upon, and I hope to, in some way, have a measurable difference in that. Thank you. Good night.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. And with that, we've concluded our debate for this evening. To our candidates, we thank you so much for participating. To the voters, thanks to all of you who took the time to watch the debate and inform yourselves before the November 8th general election. As a reminder, the voter registration deadline is October 11th, and early voting begins the next day, October 12th. All registered voters can participate in the general election, and we encourage you to visit azcleanelections.gov for official, accurate voting information. Thank you and good night.